allegiance to the one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty. Okay. Welcome everybody to the 75-23 meeting. This time we'll move on to our agenda. Yes, Stacy, you gonna do the
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, thanks, Mr. Chairman, board. At the last utility advisory committee meeting, it was requested to show presentation that I give to the Board of County Commissioners for the estimated budget for the upcoming 23-24 year. So I went ahead and put that PowerPoint, printed it off, and put it in here for all the committee members to see. If they have any questions or any comments, to answer anything. But it's pretty straightforward, and just trying to move the utilities and grow it, and by doing so, hopefully we can earn a little bit more revenue and cover ourselves.
Anybody got any questions on? You got any discussion about the budget request? Everybody can see. Let's just go over the request. Just go over everybody. Line item.
So the Ellisville water system personal service line item in the budget, I'm requesting an increase from 373 to 584. Now that is actually going. The reason that is a couple $100,000 is I'm requesting an administrative position to help me with a lot of the administrative duties. Taking from Mr. Kirby's department and putting the 3 vehicles I currently have plus one additional new vehicle for another employee, putting those under the utility budget and then capturing the gas with that vehicle. That's what those numbers are. As you can see on the second line item, the Ellisville wastewater system, the increase there is because it takes approximately $68,067 for operating and maintenance to run 125,000 gallon package unit. Since we are expanding that package unit, I took those numbers and just paralleled them into the additional 50,000 gallon expansion. So that's where those numbers come from. The Mason City, like I explained to the Board of County Commissioners, Mason City, I'm actually decreasing that by $10,000. So over the course of this year, we have done a lot of the maintenance, preventative, and also predictive maintenance to those 2 irrigation wells that provide those communities. And I don't think I'll need the additional $10,000 in the budget for those. So I just decreased it down to $10,000, which is enough to install a brand new well if needed. The Fort White water system, I did not increase it at all. We are keeping that at $200,000. And with the help of the town, they have been very, very forthright in helping us with their ARPA money. So between the two, I do not think there'd be a need for any additional. Plus, we've also bought a lot of spare parts and equipment for that plant. So we should be covered for this year. Ellisville water system, excuse me, it's not moving forward. We're not increasing that budget at all. We have bought a lot of spare parts for it. We bought a lot of spare pumps, spare motors, bearings, seals, and then obviously distributional equipment such as mechanical joints, curb stops, meter boxes, heavy-duty meter boxes. But we have enough from there that I didn't feel that we would need to increase. And then professional services, I'm requesting $203,000. That is a new line item that I'm requesting in utility. Part of that obviously will be $120,000, would allow me for new permitting, design, and engineering resources for projects that the utility advisory and Board of County Commissioners in the town of Fort White want me to pursue. So that was just a request of mine. The FDE permit renewal for Ellisville wastewater is $53,000. So that would cover that, as well as $30,000 for next year for Mr. Grady Williams's utility attorney fees over the course of 12 months.
So previously, this board did things like the South Columbia study, hired the attorney. There was no line item in the utility to cover those costs. The Board of County Commissioners.
Exactly. Board of County Commissioners is going to also The four vehicles, basically, and that's for the utility.
Yes, sir.
So that's basically for the whole utility.
That's, yeah, well, I mean,
So that's
myself,
for Fort White, Ellisville.
yeah, that's myself, two persons that we currently are employed, and we're hiring one more. So those four vehicles would be at the disposal of the four employees traveling between Fort White, Ellisville, the mega industrial park, wherever we're needed.
And this is a budget request to the Board of County Commissioners from the county, right?
Yes,
So we'll be funding the whole project. That's it?
Yes, sir.
If they're still not funded, that will eventually have to be added, will be things like backhoes and
Yes.
things that we're gonna need.
On top of that, we have.
We're trying to crawl before we run.
Right.
So is it fair to say you really haven't increased cost that much because you've already, I mean, this is stuff you're already capturing in another budget now, you're just moving over? Because I think
For the best,
Yeah.
other departments have had to absorb this because vehicles are, under Kevin and then we're moving over here.
yes,
That was one of the things we talked about earlier. is Pretty much the utility is run by the public works. And the public works department hides all the costs on utilities by providing all the equipment, manpower.
Any more questions on this? Okay. All right, no problem, making industrial park update.
yes, sir. You'll see a few pictures. As you can see from the picture, the work is progressing nicely. They are working on the rainwater runoff pond. They're also working on the 1.2 million gallon, 4 million gallon holding pond. Digging those items now as we speak. They got the spray field easement approved, signed. So now they're going to start laying 6,000 linear feet of spray field piping. So it's moving together nicely. We did have a hiccup last week in regard to our water and wastewater on site. The city of Lake City, Mr. Paul Dial expressly stated to me that he would not allow us to hook up to our water or wastewater lines that the city currently has on 90. And basically, if they could not provide water and wastewater for the entirety of the facility, that they were not going to approve our request. So by doing so, I am dropping back hunting, coming up with some numbers, coming up with some ideas, as plans, how to move forward. And I'll present them to Mr. Kirby and Mr. Kraus and see what we can move forward with.
We do have how many wells do we currently have at the main industrial park?
2 test wells and the third, which is out on County Line Road. Yes, sir.
How far are these wells from the facility?
The second test well, probably within a half mile.
That's your question now. Wasn't they running some pipe already up to the city line?
The pipe has already been laid. Yes, sir. We have 2 6-inch stub outs already out there to, water and wastewater.
And the city had agreed to.
Originally,
Next to these lines, right?
they had agreed to help us. I believe Mr. Dowles talked to the Board of County Commissioners a couple months ago and said that he would be willing to work with us and work with the county to help facilitate the growth of that negative industrial park.
Did he, I wasn't privy to this, but did he say that he had instructions from council or anything to do this? This is a decision he just made on his own?
Sir, from what he told me, he said that was his decision and for me to pass it along to my council. So as I will pass it along to my advisory council, and then I'm going to, obviously, as I see commissioners, explain to them if they have questions. I'm here to answer any questions.
The city of Lake City is a public utility, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
We have a lawyer here working for the county. What is your opinion on the public utility saying they're not going to hook up to a customer requesting water or sewer?
Well, is that within their service territory?
Yes.
Yes. So if you look at the picture, they service the prison right next door.
Okay.
So they're providing service here. This is where Casey wants to service.
Sounds like to me we need to insist.
Say that again,
Sounds like to me we need to insist.
that's kind of
Have we,
what I
have we
was
filed an
thinking.
application for service?
Absolutely,
From
yes.
my knowledge, a public utility can't deny service to a customer.
Yeah, if it's within their service territory and they've committed to provide service in that territory, that's correct.
That's kind of the way I understand how it works too. I just wanted to make sure that.
Do you know if they've got a current bulk rate available?
They have provided us with a bulk rate in the past, what they would provide us water for, yeah. David, I'm correct saying that, right?
I mean, when we applied for the tap, we were not asking for a special rate.
No, I'm just saying, but they did provide us with a special rate at one time, that they would provide water to the, like industrial park.
Yes. But on this particular tap and impact, we were just requesting standard.
But we didn't ask for no special rate, we just asked for the same rate.
Standard rate that anybody would apply.
I've been involved in these fights before between a city territory and the county territory. And usually the bottom line is you're gonna have to resolve it contractually. If that's what this is about.
But we don't know if this is the wishes of the council. You
Yeah.
got the city manager speaking, and I mean, I followed pretty much all the meetings. I've not been brought up in one city meeting. So is he just speaking for him, or is he speaking for the council? And he can't speak for the city council. So I think you need to get something on their agenda and let them tell you no, not him.
I think probably our lawyer needs to send the city a letter. That's how you proceed with this. Because obviously we run lines with taps there with the understanding that they were gonna provide us with water and sewer. And we have invested quite a bit of money running these lines up there to their lines to be tied in. I don't know that they can deny us service this late in the game, but I would ask that question. Anything else on that? How's the plant coming?
The plan itself, the work is doing great. Everybody's, Smith's staying right on top of it. Tim Prep is doing an excellent job with their site civil work. It's just, they're doing really, really good work. Everything's moving, progressing real well.
Ellisville to Fort White water line update.
All righty, so this is actually on the county's website, the entire 396-page document. I didn't think y'all wanted me to print it all off and put it in your package, so I left it electronically. It was sent out a couple weeks ago for bid. It's out for bid currently. We are getting interest from numerous vendors. I've already met with one vendor to walk over some questions. I'm meeting, or I have an email from another vendor that I've got to answer some questions about. And it'll close the 17th this month. So it's progressing. I mean, hopefully this project will start in the next couple of months. We'll have a water line running.
Fort White, do y'all have any concerns about this water line moving forward?
No, sooner rather than later.
All right, let's talk about Ellisville.
Ellisville is moving forward. We had a little hiccup in regards to elevation of the old train and the new train. The new train has an AWT screen system on the front end, which captures a lot of your solids and allows your liquids to pass through, and it drains off into a dumpster. That difference in elevation was 5 feet 11 inches. By doing so, we could not control the flow to each facility and create equal distribution, so to speak. So the engineering, Arcadis went back to the drawing board, come up with a very easy, simple plan that this week we'll make a little design change, implement said plan, and start testing later this week. That's the goal. It was just an oversight from an elevational change standpoint, because when we go from 50 to 75, that's encompassing an upgrade of our original train, the first 25,000, which is going to have that influent weir box with screens that's just like the other, like the current new train. So all of them will look exactly the same here in the next little while, but currently just to ensure we can get good flow equally, having to do a little modification. We'll be working with them.
Let's go ahead for what?
Water treatment plant, okay, so as you can see, on your AEL in your packet, County of Fort White, this quarter, we failed the PTHM and HMA5. Our disinfectant byproduct, we failed for. The next month, we will send out a letter, stating that we failed. We're doing our due diligence to look at everything we possibly can. We believe it is a contact time issue, because the town is growing and we are starting to use a lot of water, for a 5,000 gallon hydro tank. Also, obviously the wells, and I'm still waiting from the Florida Rural Water Association, or DEP. Florida Rural Water Association Engineering Services, they sent a temporary permit to DEP. I'm waiting for the DEP to sign it so I can install the Totalox green filter sand replacement. Once I get that, they'll give me a temporary permit, a testing permit, then I can install the green sand, which that green sand should help our disinfectant byproducts as well. Totalox will. So there's a lot of moving parts down there right now, but we are working towards it. And obviously the Fort White to Ellisville water line is going to help. That's going to help it immensely. But during that process over the next 12 months, we are doing our due diligence to get things situated for the residents down there.
Well, at our last meeting, there was some concern by our county manager and assistant county manager about the agreement for the wastewater treatment plant in Fort White.
Yes,
We're waiting on County of Fort White to approve basically the grant to be spent. Maybe you want to explain what we're waiting on that? Because there was some, our last meeting was brought up that we need an approval from County of Fort White. Did we get that approval? For the
Wastewater?
Yeah,
The town of Fort White, well, two things. The project itself would be North Florida Professional Services.
right.
They could tell you what's going on with that. What we talked to the town of Fort White about was the school system's sewer plant,
Mhm.
and if they were interested in us pursuing it. And they voted unanimously for us to pursue it. They would like the title to the town.
We were like, what?
Titled to the town.
Title to the town.
Yes, they would like, if we acquire it from the school district, or to be put in the town's name.
Why would it not be in the utilities?
Suggest what they requested.
Ronnie, can you explain that? What you're asking for, or what town
Yeah, the
that?
thought process is that the utility system right now in Fort White is owned by the town of Fort White. And so therefore, the wastewater availability at the school system be also in the name of the town of Fort White with an interlocal agreement between the town and the county for operation and maintenance, just like the current utility is. Treat it the same.
David, I was under the impression that we was working on a regional utility where an independent board would own everything and do so. Where are we on that?
So this committee has talked about it. There's two different scenarios. We've talked several times, and Stasha's actually drawn up the preliminary documents for a authority between the town and the county. But then out there's also the 5 counties who are talking about wanting to create a regional utility authority. They just had one meeting. I think they got another meeting coming up on the 12th. So 5 counties have all expressed interest, but it hasn't gone any further than expressed interest. It hasn't been fleshed out. Now, the agreement between the town and the county, we're ready to move forward with in terms of getting with our attorney and getting with the town's attorney and kind of fleshing those points. But at some point, this committee has said they want to go to an authority.
I think we need to move forward with the authority. Because at the end of the day, that's the only way this utility moves forward, with a regional utility with an independent board. That way it takes the financial pressure off of county commissioners and council members of the town of Fort White and anybody that joins this utility in the future. It would take, you need one governing board overseeing that utility.
But until that time, the regional utility isn't even formed yet or legal, so we can't really own.
Right, once the utility authority is created, all the assets would get transferred over to the
Exactly.
authority. They would take care of all the expenses, the operations, the whole 9 yards. It would not be a burden.
And I'm just saying, we probably need to get started moving forward with that regional utility. And,
And we were at that meeting
yeah,
for the regional and intend on coming on the 12th as well.
But I think our approach right now is we need to go ahead and start the authority between the town and the county,
mhm.
and then add additional counties in and
Additional counties, if they want to join, they can, yeah.
in the direction we're looking at.
Yes, sir.
So that we can go ahead and get the framework started.
I think I'd like to make a motion now that we instruct the attorney to go ahead and draw up the framework and the paperwork to start the regional utility.
I'll second it.
Or discuss, anybody got anything to add to that?
You're saying an authority between the town and the county.
Mhm.
Later can be added to if other jurisdictions wish to.
Yes.
Basically, if we are in the utility business to move forward, original utility is the way to go. And then that takes the city of Columbia County out of it and the city of Lakes, Fort White and any other county that want to join in. That relieves the financial obligation between in the town of Fort White. That responsibility would be for the regional utility board, an independent board that would run the utilities. The board with members appointed by the government agencies.
I think
How
Scott,
many county Fort White can have their appointee, how many county can have theirs and
I
department
can
of
tell
utility.
you what he's drafted so far.
If we go back to October, when I presented all the options, we could do it via legislatively, keep what we got, interlocal agreement. Basically, it was my understanding that this board wanted to do something similar to what Okeechobee County did, which basically in 1994, they created an interlocal agreement that created an independent special district. I believe that's the term, correct? Yeah. That created the Okeechobee Utility Authority, and then later on, they got in, it had a little service territory in Glades County, so they created an interlocal between the authority and Glades County. That's how they added on other counties. So it is up to whoever's putting all this together to, you can have some folks from the town and the county appointed to this board. You can have one person appointed by the board. You could from the town and county original. There's different ways of doing it, or you could. The other route is to go to the legislative route, but we decided not to do that because it's quicker. So that is something that you know.
We have an attorney, so that,
Yeah.
Now we have attorneys.
Yeah, so-
But what I'm saying is, I guess, I don't see a future in this utility with one council making decisions one way and Board of County Commissioners making decisions the other way. You got to have one board making decisions. And they vote, whatever that decision they make, that's the final result. That's
That's the only way it works.
I've done research and that's the only way that I've seen these utilities move forward and work.
It's better for growth overall.
Yes.
So I have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Yeah. Any opposed? Good. We'll move forward with that. So have us an outline by the next meeting of what it would look like.
I'll have something for the board. I'll have something for the board.
All right, North Florida Professional Services Master Plan update.
Yes, sir. So I'll put this on the agenda at the request of, Florida, and, I'm gonna be turning it over to Mr. Brian and Trevor and Ricky.
There's some 8.5 by 11s in that package, but we printed some 11 by 17s, might be a little bit easier to read, so I wanted to pass that out.
Okay.
That's about 4 or 5 there. But it's here. Stacy might pass me. That way, you can go to left, sir. Thank you, sir. Another one?
Got it? Anybody else need one?
So,
Everybody got one?
I guess Pat, Jennifer got a copy for the first.
yeah, and it's also posted on the, webpage. So, yeah, thank you for having us here today. And the first copy page is really not meant to read, but I think in light of the conversation the board and the town had a few minutes ago, it's nice to see everything on the system and that. And then we got some blow up the details. We also have some bigger maps we're working on in the master plan that you'll be able to need to. But when you first look at the system, you look up on the north area of the south. This is the south study area. So south 90. You look at it, and that's a MIP area. We'll be below over that. And then detail B, right now coming out of the large drawing, you can kind of see right where the word detail B, there's a water line, which is a projected future water line that stops and help me out County Road right south of
240.
County Road 240. And, 1 year or decade, maybe that will connect NFP and Ellisville area. Detail B is Ellisville. We'll go up the next page in a minute. Certainly go down to detail B and detail C, which is Fort White and eventually Three Rivers State area with the pay phase out initiatives. That the existing project that is currently out for bid shows the water line, about a 10-mile water line going out to connect the system where that water line is going to use as a supply in lieu of Fort White. So again, while this is not meant to read, study in detail, it just starts seeing this map of one, me being in the Newton area was very helpful to piece things together and envision long-term how there can be more of a system that's connected. So we have 3 blow-ups. The following page talks about the work that we've been doing in our master plan. Go ahead, Dave.
If we're doing the regional utilities with the 5 counties, Union County has no utilities. So their expectation would be to connect to Ellisville. Not on the point.
Will be next time. We'll show it like a different color or something that shows that it possibly could be.
And also,
They were very interested in the Providence area, us providing water and sewer to that area.
in addition, was discussions of looping the system through the interchange.
You're right, 75.
Yeah.
And change.
And that's, originally the plan was to loop it down Howell Road. There's some discussions, do you still want to go down Howell Road or do you want to loop it through the interchange? This is a study of how we're going to grow. You're going to want to loop it one way or the other. I think Chad Williams did the design on the Howell Road. Stacy discussed it with the Water Management District about doing it through the interchange. Therefore, less flushing, better circulation of the system. And at some point, long-term, you may see a push to get it down Howell Road as well. Even someday looping it back to the town of Fort White.
We have discussed that whether, how we show that in a 5, 10, 20-year plan.
That would be a 20-year.
Yeah. We do come up north of detail, over to Ellisville. But we'll look at how we show that. We might even show a line like that even beyond 20. But wanted to give an update of, the work that's being done, how to tie it together. start looking at NFIP. Commissioner mentioned about, different test wells. I think we talked last month. All the way to the right is the approximate physical site of test well number 3 that came out positive being favorable. Where the first 2 wells were closer to where you look at the water treatment plant, the wastewater treatment plant that's getting built. So that's about a 2-3 mile run. We met with the county, and from design purpose, we believe it's best to have 2 parallel lines feeding from the wells to the water plant. In a normal well field, you have 2 or 3 wells. If long term, you want more reliability and redundancy, rather than have a single well and a single pipe going 3 miles to your water plant. That look at the design of having a dual 12-inch line versus 16-inch lines. So we're formulating that in our plan, and to get the final reviews. That's the way we're moving right now. And that gives you some redundancy in case there's some problem with that pipe as your main water source. Now we then connect over to the new water treatment plant that's currently in design. We'll have 30% time design documents for the team to review over the next month or so. And kind of restarted that. It paused a little bit while we had a test well 2. So we kind of paused that. We're back moving on that design. And then looking at the area, the industrial complex, current layout, a week or 2 ago we met, and we've relocated a couple planned lift stations in that. For the wastewater collection, conceptual design has altered a little bit, just knowing some different buildings that we got updates. I don't have the names all memorized and the roads and the railroad track.
We talked about moving the pump station from the curb in the railroad down to the intersection with FMIP Parkway.
Yes. And then, so we have those conceptual drawings, start laying out. That's a separate project, the design, but from the master plan, showing that, how that all incorporates. Looking at plan flows originally, their desire, I believe, of some industrial facilities didn't want to have chlorinated water. So they have to have a separate system that's more served for industrial and fire water. You need 12, 16-inch line types, where for the domestic flow, unless you have manufactured low flow. So right now we're looking at 2 different systems on the design, one for low flow domestic, and then long-term for the industrial capacity. While there may not be a specific customer right now, not wanting chlorinated water, to have a system separate on that. So at this point in time in the 5, 10, 20 years, this would be a separate system. It will not be connected to the whole system, but obviously over decades, you could see it connecting and looping into a more holistic system.
Well, let me ask you a question. If it's a non-potable water system, could you use the other well tracks for that system that didn't test out for potable water?
I think if you knew that was going to be the plan forever, there could be a possibility of doing that. I think what the flexibility, if you have to connect it into a potable system in the future, you can convert it over, right?
From a non-potable standpoint, we're kind of walking a tightrope, if you will. It's not that it's necessarily non-potable, it's not potable to DEP standards. At one time, we had some users that really didn't want highly treated water. They want to have their own treatment process to do what they need to do for their own water. We don't have that user anymore, but if the county still wants that capability, then the way we do that is we have this separate line, and it's, for lack of a better word, we call it fire water, fire protection water, high flows, so that you can supply industrial users that would have their own treatment processes to be able to deal with that water and all that. The reason we had the first two wells did not pass, we had compounds in it that was not suitable to potable water. They're not suitable for, from probably a user standpoint, if they had less they had to deal with, the better off they would be. So, my opinion is we've got good wells now. We're bringing the water to our plant anyway. Just go ahead and use the water that we got. It's good water. Let's don't handicap ourselves right out the gate. Okay.
Yeah, I was just thinking from the standpoint of, saving all the pipe running, you know what I'm saying? But
If it could be purely industrial water that was used in boilers like that, yeah, but then we're gonna be limited to only that type of water.
The original plan had a 16-inch line pipe and wet build, 16 line is about 2,500 gallons a minute capacity. And 212s, it's about the same capacity and provide just some. Especially with the system not being grid waste, water plants gridded, you need to have some, you don't want a single point of failures. You want to have some redundancy there.
For instance, what it is, if you had a food processor that came in, we would need the water that we got from the good well, the water from the first two wells would not be conducive to food processing.
And in my experience, when we see some manufacturers or beer manufacturers or somebody or food, the first thing they do is they take water that's treated to buildings like this, is put RO units in to take the chlorine out, take the minerals out. So it's a cost of that. So having the water that is not fully chlorinated is helps them. And the fire water you hope never use, but you test it. And the volume that you need for the pipes of that fire water is so much more than you put the method you use there. They could be designed different ways, but I believe that's the approach and it's a good design. The next picture you got turned vertical. That's the way the layout of the system is really the Ellisville area. Maybe Charles brought up a couple of different items there. So the blue solid lines are existing lines representative where the current location, the blue being water and green being sewer. May not be anything in. There's some, if you start from the center of the area, obviously a lot of growth. So in our growth projections, probably step back, you look at in this area where there's 43,000 people in the population at 2020 in this whole area that we on the front page. And and Trevor, you might have to help me with the abbreviation. I always go by Beaver. It's the Bureau of Economic Business Research. I might be missing one word there, but basically everyone uses their population projections in this industry, in this area to project out. And over a 27-year period to 2050, the population projection could go up as high as 59,000 people. They have the way Beaver works, and in the study we'll have the charts, and we have draft charts right now. It can range anywhere from say high 40s to high 50,000 people. Typically in experience, you usually go, there's a low, there's a high, there's a medium, and most areas will pick a medium growth. We believe here the most proper thing in the design is to pick a high growth with the capacity of this area growing, the people moving to Florida. So we're projecting out the Beaver High, which would get 59,000 people. Now, number 59 is precise in my opinion, 25-year out projection. So we'll call it 60,000. But that doesn't account for the Ellisville area. The Ellisville area by itself with that interchange, and everyone in this room knows more than I do at this point, and but you just see it. And sometimes it's good having somebody's view that hadn't been around there long. When you drive through that, it's unbelievable when you can see what could happen there. Not that far from Gainesville, close to Lake City area and what have you, in Columbia County. So we're looking at Pacifics. Are there some new facilities, whether that's going to be large gas stations and restaurants going around there, which also could probably prop some additional residential growth. So we're going to put a little bit higher growth area around Ellisville to, and whatever we're doing projection, it won't be right because no projection is correct. But we know we believe that should be higher than even the Beaver High ratios.
I have one question.
Go ahead.
The 51,000, is that in these three particular boxes or is that just
The whole area. The whole area is really, it's the South County basically of this sheet.
So I'm familiar with those charts and I've seen the number for the county as a whole, and that could be anywhere from about, I think the median range is about 85.
But that included Lake City, right?
That's, yeah, the lower half of the county to about 100,000.
So we were just looking at US 90 South, and not including the city limits.
In the front page, we're calling that the utility study area because that's what we've been tasked to do. And
So for perspective, the county's roughly about 71,000 right now. That's the whole county. And that'll be 59 just south of 90.
that's 2050 numbers.
But you got to realize, you get north of 90, we've got a big chunk of county that's in the forest, so we've got a big chunk that's kind of wasn't populated. You get the 41, west of there.
So with all that, we know we need flexibility. I think some of the things like Stacy mentioned, plant capacities at 25,000, 50,000 and up to 100 and different ones. When we get to Fort White, we'll talk a little more detail about there. But in Ellisville, you see that existing with the water treatment plants, the wastewater treatment plant, we need a size in the master plan that probably 1 year, a decade, those will not be operated that way. They'll most likely be a pump station pumped to one of these facilities. Right now, correct me, Ricky or Stacy, the water is being supplied by Ellisville plant for one of the restaurants, both of them? Both of them, okay. Comes underneath the interstate. Yes, this must be the other one, yes. And the wastewater treatment plant, on state level, they're kind of moving away from that, and certainly here that's been discussed. So we'll plan for that accordingly. What's shown here, a couple of circles in gray, just examples of places where there are available lots and developed lots. If a neighborhood's already developed with successful wells, there's not going to be any time soon, the next decade or two, that people are going to convert over. But there could be times down the road where, there's challenges with wells, enough people in the area, that the first thing, once it starts happening, one or two wells, it starts happening a lot of them, and people are going to raise their hand and say, so this water line, this is really meant for transmission lines, but they'll be available for stubs and source lines. How that growth and how development happens is to be determined. But these lines would be sized for growth. And certainly this line was here prior to those developments, those areas would have been centralized water. So a little tougher to expand the sewer out. Water is always a little bit easier because it's pressurized. And we know there's some potential commercial development on that I-75, whether right now we have it shown as being the northwest corner here, but that's symbolic. It could be very, things could change around there but make sure we build the facilities, the lines large enough for that. Again, the kind of the model.
When you're talking about that, I'd like to ask a question. Future sewer development in Ellisville. What would be your recommendation on how to expand that system? Do we keep doing 25,000 gallon trains through the system, or do we?
When you talk about that growth projection, did we have that?
So we did some growth projections, just looking at the monthly operational reports from the water plant in the past 10 years. Greg had me look this up. And
Before we get into that, just kind of, when you're doing this, a lot of times you're dealing with a lot of residential growth. And when you get utilities more established, a lot of times growth in that population kind of drives your development. At Ellisville, you've got a very busy interchange that the county has focused on as far as trying to develop. You've created a land use and zoning down there to encourage that. That, from what we've seen, is pretty successful. I'm sure we'll get into that in a minute, but see some of that growth. But the interstates drive a lot of users that are not part of your population or transient. And they're very difficult to pick up in population projections. So you got to look at other ways to do it. Anyway, Trevor, I'll let you get with that.
so in developing a master plan, one of the first steps that we do is we take a look at population projections and growth based on that. Brian referenced Beaver. Beaver High shows a yearly growth rate of roughly 2%. Upon Greg's recommendation, he wanted us to take a look at what type of water is actually being used at the Ellisville interchange by the water treatment plant currently. So over the past 10 years, we looked at the monthly operational reports that the county submits for water produced by the plant. And during that time, we have about 12% yearly growth. So significantly higher than the 2% projected by population growth. So that's what Greg was mentioning. You're capturing a lot of commercial usage and people coming through the county using water that aren't really accounted for in your population. So Ellisville is kind of different in that regard as opposed to your Fort White or that.
And stepping back, if you have land for existing water treatment plants, an existing wastewater treatment plant to expand, it is a lot quicker to be able to expand those than the pipes. So I think the key thing we want to make sure when we're putting the pipes in, these transmission nodes are sized. And sometimes you have to oversize them, which causes a challenge from an operation point of view. You have to oversize them in the beginning because you don't want to have to go back and tear up roads, 3, 5, 7 years later. And therefore, then you have to flush water. Right in the last 2, 3, 5 years, building plants a little tougher in North Florida or Central Florida. But still, if you have the land and you design ahead of time for, like in Fort White, we plan to detour for a few seconds, it's going to be playing for 100,000 gallons a day, but it's going to be 4 25,000 gallon trains. And at first, whether it's 50 or 25,000, most likely will be designed for, but we have the foundations, we'll have the layout, the sites for everything, the spray field size for that. And same thing in Ellisville, if you have and I don't have all that memorized right now, but maybe someone else could help me. Do we have room for expansion on the water? Okay. So.
We have 88 acres.
88 acres. Okay. So, and then you got to look at the DEP permits. So eventually the DEP permit will be outran with the growth in Ellisville that we project in 15 years from now, give or take, maybe 10. So we got a plan for the permit, and is probably the key critical path item in that area.
Now, of that 88 acres, because you got your water plant where it's located, most of those are north of the water plant. So you're probably not going to expand your sewer plant north of the water plant. So where your sewer plant is limited from the water plant south.
So that's one of my points.
Because you don't want the sewer plant.
If we're gonna need expansion, or if we're gonna have to expand, we know we're gonna have to expand. You're gonna have to get property at some point.
Wait for spray.
We all know property don't go up, so it might be.
Based on the projections, we think that in very short order, probably one of the first orders of business for the utility authority is going to have to look at the Ellisville operation as far as expanding the water and the wastewater down there. Even though you've already got projects doing it right now, you're just playing catch up.
I know that's what I know. We're playing catch up right now. So, and the slower we move, I guess, the more we're gonna be trying to catch up. So.
When you have those channel operations down there, well placement, if you have to add additional wells, it's going to be critical.
Yes. Well, based on the numbers, your next step is going to be a bigger step than your first 2 steps. We're all before you walk, we pick start running.
We're doing all this planning and it makes sense to me if we're planning for years to come. We need to be looking at what property we need now and buy it up now and not let it be developed. And then we got to go further out, move everything further out.
Further you go, that's just more popping. If you can buy property where your operation is.
And obviously that's going to be one of the very first responsibilities or tasks that you're going to need to do with the new authority.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think the property is the chicken and egg. If you go out there and say you want that property, that kind of raises the value. Developments really aren't that valuable to land until you got the water sewer and Mr. Williams could talk about what happens in Clay County, you know very well, and I know what happens in Duval County. You're buying property at $200,000 an acre. That was 5 years ago. So the more you do ahead of time to have that, it's so much better. And which I think everyone in the room here has expertise in that. And Mr. Ford, you mentioned that you can build a pipeline And right now, we're fortunate in the area that pipelines are, you can get right away access and what have you. There are, when you get the pipelines in downtown Fort White, it's not gonna be fun. But, you know, along the corridors, we can build a pipeline. So this pipeline, 12-inch line, it's basically sized for 2 million gallons a day of transfer right now. It's, I just take the 12 square and say, what kind of work? It's about 144 times 0 is about 1,450 gallons a minute, which is about 2 MGD. So the pipeline is very adequate for long term. And that's during normal flow. If you had to pressurize that a little bit higher, you probably go run 3 MGD through that plant one day. So you start to build a grid, especially if Ellisville expands, and we get down to talk about Fort White area, when we flip the next page. Right-hand side, kind of mauve color highlights show existing water lines in the filled in, you know, not the dotted lines. The green lines, some of that is future, right? The green solid line?
Yeah, the green is all representative of cemetery, so we can expect.
Yeah, so the green is being a solid line, a little different than dotted, just with the color there, we decided to leave that solid. Well, and you look at that, coming from the right is the plant from, the line from Ellisville, which at this point in time is always going west. Well, long term, if you have capacity at different plants, there would be time for reliability purposes, a decade down the road, the flow could go the other direction. And you see that happen. So you look at the current Fort White service boundary. In that, we plan on the bottom left, it shows a note that we plan a 4 by 25,000 gallon per day train. And mentioned a few minutes ago, 50,000 gallons at first, correct, Ricky? Are you
Talking about
wastewater plant? Yeah, 50,000. Probably. We are concerned about having not enough flow at first. You know, so there is still, we get some details in the school matters. If that flow came over early, you definitely go to 50,000. But you can build it at 25 increments, allow us to work ourselves into to get some flow going into it. The foundation, the site will all be built out 100,000 gallons a day. But that's not going to be big enough, as we know, and the grant money, long-term goal is for Three Rivers Estates, since everybody is Tuckney, to get rid of the 1,100 existing septic tanks. There's also another undeveloped lots, another 600-700, they got about 1,700 lots just in this area in yellow alone. And then there's also potential development along that corridor, that's Highway 27, correct? All right, what's our main highway going? It's Tunney. 27. All right, I'm learning, I'm doing good. I just want to know how to get this done. It seems easy to get to now than I remember going to it in the past, so after a few tries. Not ready for that cold water this summer though. So right now we have a spot here. When we talk about land, we specifically, especially us in the meeting like today, they want to say, hey, here's a spot to put water treatment plant in a future water treatment plant. It certainly would be a good location from a systems point of view. Is the land available there? Is that the right exact spot? Not sure. It could be, but we know we need land in that general area here north of State Road 27, or ideally here, that allows for a gridded structure between Fort White wastewater, you know, or at least to be able to meet up against it if you need to have a pump station going one way or the other, allows that. And that long term is going to be 600,000 gallons per day build out if all of those septic tanks get converted. That certainly is dependent upon grant money. To be able to do septic tanks in that range, we're talking, you know, 30, 40, $50 million type numbers, depending on what you're encapsulating in addition to the $40 million. The estimate 2 years ago was $67 million for basically what's shown here. That's estimate 2 years ago. When it gets built out in future value money, you can see what that number might be. The ideal in the water plant would be, and someone mentioned earlier, is eventually you would go up north of this area of the water plant and possibly go to Howell Road to connect into Ellisville. You already got Ellisville connected on this new pipeline, the 12-inch pipeline. So how do you grid that together? You start building a system. And that's critical for the operations long term to have reliability for maintenance, whatever. Any specific questions before maybe a couple of other points?
Just so you're aware, The town still has that land. Where it was originally at some point that they claimed.
Coming off of Roman Church, northeast.
One right there.
More hills.
Right at the corner. So the town still has that from the water management district. So it is still available if you get to a point that you need more well.
That goes back to if the future growth goes as such, that water plant in that area, then you would utilize that as your tie point for how Ellisville this way and cover 7 tie-in improvement. That's what you would do.
Is that land restricted just to water?
Yep.
It is restricted just to water?
You did just for anything else, you have to give it back to the district.
No, I'm just saying, would they have a problem if we expanded sewer plant on that at some point?
Probably not a good place for a sewer plant.
No, not a good place.
Wetlands. I think at this point, I mean, we're kind of like a covey quail here. We give you some information, but you got to start thinking about where do you want to provide service for. I mean, 50 years down the road, I can't tell you what that's going to be, you know. Even 20 might have.
Where my thinking is going. I know you've been to the villages. I mean, you see how that's expanding down there. You know, they build so many houses and so many, as they move down, they build a new sewer plant for that new development for that part of it. They're not trying to pump and pipe everything to one plant. From the way I see it, they're building new, different sewer plants as they expand to different. Is there an advantage to that? I mean, trying to put all these lift stations in and pump at 20 miles or 10 miles? Or?
I think as you grow, yeah, you're going to get multiple plants. It's not you know, sometimes I get frustrated when we're doing these type of documents because human nature is to look at it as, well, that's cast in stone, it can't never change.
Right, yeah.
It's called a plan for a reason.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, it's not the Bible. It's not the Bible, it's not written, you know, for nothing. You know, it can change and you should reevaluate your plan at least every 2 to 3 years, if not sooner, depending on what your needs are.
I just wanted
And right now, what we can see is Three Rivers Estates has a lot of customers. There's a lot of benefit, a lot of benefit of picking those customers up. So to us, it was, you know, in a lot of ways, an easy target to hit.
And not only that, as much water and sewer is available down there, when it is available, you got a lot of lots that's not buildable lots down there now that would be a buildable lot. Because the reason they're not buildable right now is because you can't get a septic permit.
I only brought up that property so that you just put it in the plan as a potential resource. Not that it's in our current plan, but that it is a potential resource.
I believe somebody come in tomorrow and want to put in a big development Columbia City, it's going to change probably your plans. We're going to have to make some adjustments at that particular point in time. And today, we don't have that, so we can't, you know, we don't want to just, you know, go throw something out there right now.
The sewer plants in the villages, now they're owned by that development company that's developing the villages. Am I correct?
I'm not sure. I would assume they have a utility authority or some sort of utility down there operating as naturally as they would come up.
The villages are kind of a private town.
Yeah, I know, yeah. I've been doing a little reading on it, research on it, and from what I'm reading, that's like a private, the whole thing is private. You know, sewer plants and all of them.
There's 2 or 3 towns like that across the state.
Yeah.
That's been in the planning stage for 40 years. So.
Yeah.
When I worked with the utility, we was putting in utilities for the expansion of Crawford Turnpike 20 years ago.
Yeah, they're putting those bridges in, a lot of those bridges are going in right now to cross the turnpike. Well, I think I agree with Mr. King. We need to have a plan, but I also agree with Greg. It's not set in stone. We can't, adjust as we go some too.
Exactly. Based on the information we have right now, this is the best case scenario.
Right.
is all we expected.
So the villages are under community development districts, which are alternatives to municipalities. They provide the water.
They go out and get bonds typically,
Private investment.
and they pay a homeowner association who pays off their bonds. You see that one response?
We have branches the same way.
I don't got a CDD 100%, but I think that's the one with how they operate.
I'm trying to build schools too. I'm not in the village. And I think to, listen on that, I'd say out of sight of wastewater plant, a lot of that becomes what can you do with that for? So some of those limitations of the land, and that's been changing a lot, with the different rules the last few years. That will be a factor, just like the railroads are.
I was going to, do we need to look at at maybe doing a deep flow injection site in Ellisville at some point, get away from Sprayfield so we have more room? That's sort of the long-term plan at the industrial park.
I think we'll have to look at everything. The last thing I did in Duval was, I think I get mixed up that house bill where there's no surface water, where both the effluent in Duval, you had 20 million gallons a day or a quarter of it going to reclaim. What are you gonna do with the rest of it? And that is the most economical choice versus the other choice they're doing is treat to drinking level quality and discharging into the aquifer. So this area is a little different topography and land. So we'll have to look at each one. That is certainly an option. Expensive.
I agree.
Now, you're starting to touch on some of the advantages I see of regional utility, especially with getting a bigger region if we can, because you have a little bit more influence. The problem that I'm seeing right now with injection wells versus spray fields is you got some competing regulations, i.e. the water management district sets minimum flows and levels. They won't see groundwater levels at a certain point. When we draw water out of the ground for use, we draw that water down. Spray fields don't put that back in the ground. It's great for treatment purposes, or from the DEP standpoint, they like it. But flip side to it is it hurts us with water management district on maintaining groundwater levels. Our injection wells, the reason we got the 2 million gallons out there at the industrial park was we was able to offset it, not by a straight injection well from the wastewater plant, although we did, that was utilized in that calculation. But the biggest shot in the arm we got was from the drainage wells that the county put in Everglades Terrace. We was able to get a big credit for that. And had we not had that, that would have been a heavy lift.
And from what I've been, I don't allow those wells to be put in anymore.
Your recharge wells have to be treated to drinking water standard. So it's a lot more expensive to do, not as practical. And DEP doesn't approve.
$1 million for 1 gallons. That's the going price right now.
In the future, you're going to look at all of these systems from a regional standpoint. We're going to have to be engaged with the district as far as they're doing their rules, DEP and their rules, and how it affects us here in Northeast Florida.
Probably the last thing to touch up on is the grants. Last Monday, I spoke to DEP, and we're working through any items that we need to do to move forward with the various different grants. There's the $5.3 million grant that was signed May 2022. And then working on putting an application for a $4.5 million grant that the DEP is well aware of. And finalize looking at that. Now that's to serve the Fort White area, and accepted to centralized sewers. The driver by DEP won that, and get that centralized plan and how much that can incorporate. Those are like phase 1 and 2 of a 9-phase plan that NFP has put together a few years ago with DEP. So we'll continue to work on that, and some of that will, modify at times with different feedback and direction and cost. And anything else we miss? we look at, I think, we meet once a month here. Next month, we're thinking we'd probably talk a little bit more, present a little more about some of the details of the design of the Fort White collection system, where we're thinking about locating smaller land issues, but where we're thinking about locating a couple lift stations in the area. We believe the ones that we've worked with the town and county are make sure it's correct, we're all by the town, the places, so we'll be able to present that. That's fortunate that we have some town area. We're going to finalize conceptual design to make sure that works. We relocated, some lift stations strategically 100 yards here or there related to pick up some very different existing customers and also update where we stand on the various grants. And then the following month, by the end of August, submit a draft plan of the written document that goes and tackles the details of the Beaver studies and this, and be able to, the following meeting, be able to talk about a draft final that, team can look at of the master plan. So that's kind of what I'm thinking might be valuable to share with the team and get feedback so we can wrap this up. Direction.
Oh, one thing I wanted to bring up also before we end the meeting is, what's the thoughts on everybody about start meeting every 2 weeks instead of once a month at these meetings? I think we probably need to meet a little more often. A month is a long time to go. We got a lot going on, a lot of working right now, and
Well,
what
really,
y'all thoughts on that?
I think with Stosh is when he brings that proposal of how you're going to tie everything together, it's going to take multiple workshops to work through that. So if you can, if there's something productive to meet on, yeah, I'm all for it, but if not,
Greg, what's your thoughts on that?
Serve it, both the Board of County Commissioners and the towns, whatever y'all best to do, we'll do.
David?
I mean, I would agree, if you need to call a meeting more often. As chair, you just call a meeting.
Well, if we don't have anything to meet on, we could always call the meeting off. We could cancel the meeting. But I think we have them scheduled every 2 weeks on our, thing. Just do it every 2 weeks, and like I say, I guess me being the chair, if I look at, I'll get with you and Stacy and maybe Kevin, we don't have anything to add, or we don't really need a meeting, we just send everybody an email, we just cancel this meeting for the next scheduled date.
Want to do that, I would suggest first and third Wednesday. This is the first Wednesday of the month, you do it that way.
Say what now?
I would just like to do it the first and third Wednesday, like we're doing it right now.
First and third Wednesday?
Every 2 weeks, because it's kind of, it's kind of awful.
I got the first and third Wednesday, yeah, that's still twice a month, so yeah.
Mr. Chair, just remember TDC meets here the third Wednesday,
How do they meet?
11 o'clock.
We'd be out by 11.
How does TDC need to set up?
At least an hour.
We'd have to make it.
everybody else in the parking lot.
We can do that meeting. You do it 8:30, yeah. The second meeting of the month at 8:30.
It's only every other month that's PDC.
Oh, it's every other month, but they meet 6 times a year.
Got a question, David. How's the railroad thing coming on the industrial park?
I would defer to Jennifer.
And I would like to ask a clarified question. Which railroad part are you talking about the existing spur?
No, the contractor that.
Contractor
Come in and
looking
put
at-
the rest of the track in.
So the rail attorney is now working with a consultant to draft the agreement moving forward. We've passed the due diligence phase with them, and they did their marketing study, their feasibility study. And really what their study was looking for was any surprises, anything that we hadn't already disclosed or that they hadn't learned themselves. And they got exactly what they wanted to out of it. They're excited to move forward. So we're now drafting the agreement to move forward. And they're working on plans to extend the rail past that. We're also working with them in Norfolk Southern to get the line on the south side extended. So we're moving forward with them, working on the agreement that should be solidified, I'd say, within the next month or so.
We have a meeting in the very, very, very near future to discuss this with the industrial park as well as Kevin and myself.
The good news is they are committed to moving forward.
Because once that happens, a possibility of some.
Absolutely.
But the sewer plant is scheduled to be completed, Stacy, middle to end of next month.
Yeah, we're shooting for November 24, probably going to be January 25. But yeah, November 24.
So hopefully we'll have rail extended in a similar timeframe.
Anything else? Anybody wants to go?
David, does the county still update their comprehensive growth plan?
Right now, we're in the middle of trying to get a new planner. It's been advertised. We're hoping to hire somebody soon. And we'll get back into that. But without somebody in that position. So we did update it recently by expanding the Duda on the north end of the, up at I-10. But since we no longer have somebody in that position and we just got temporary people filling in until we hire somebody, we're kind of at a stall.
I'm just curious as to what that plan would look like compared to this plan.
It's the first thing we'll give them.
That would be, I mean, laugh if you want to, but that's knowledge that you need to have to make informed decisions when you spend the millions of dollars.
I can honestly say, if we adopt this plan, and this is the direction we're going, we're going to have to look at a change of the DUDA because you'll have municipal level services in the town of Fort White, in the town of Ellisville, and it might even be a separate DUDA or designated urban area for those.
That's why I bring it up.
Go ahead, Greg.
The plan as it's currently exists is included in our analysis. Now, some of these changes that the county's got the ideas on, those have to be incorporated and updated.
So obviously, as we expand, the Duda area is going to have to expand also around Ellisville and probably town Fort White.
But you need this data from this plan to justify to the state why you're going to expand the DUDA.
Right.
Without knowing that there's municipal area services, they're not going to expand the
Right,
DUDA.
exactly.
So yeah, that's one of the first things we'll have to look at.
That was, I don't
Good
know,
question.
maybe not speaking out of turn, but that's
Very good.
why I asked for this plan last year.
Anybody else got anything to add?
Mr. Chair, if I may, just to update the minutes for Olga. So starting this month or next month, we're going to meet, starting July or August, meet twice monthly,
I intend on having a meeting the third Wednesday of this month.
July as well.
Yeah.
So are we keeping the 8:30 time for both meetings or just the second?
Thank you.
Okay, so 9
I mean,
o'clock.
I'm up to both. If y'all want to meet at 8:30, I'm good. I mean, I'm up. You like that?
I guarantee Kevin's up.
Yeah, so yeah, let's just move our meeting down to 8:30. And we'll meet the first and third Wednesday of each month, unless noted otherwise. We'll sit
At 8:30.
So our next meeting will be the 19th.
Send out, go ahead and send out emails with the inbox to everybody. Stacy, I guess that's you.
And make sure it gets on the county calendar.
Are you good?
I'm good.
Everybody good?
We need to vote on that.
I don't, do we need to vote on that, you think?
Wouldn't hurt.
All right. I make a motion that we, starting 19th, that we meet the first and third Thursday of each, or Wednesday of each month. And the meeting times will be at 8:30. We're gonna get a second.
Second.
Get a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We're good. That's. All right, we'll adjourn. Thanks, everybody.